Hi, everybody. How are you? How is it going? Woo! 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 I can imagine you guys are really tired because it's been like a long day yesterday, and also today you've got a lot of info being thrown at you. So, well, be prepared for another 20 minutes of info being thrown at you. I'm Carmen. This is Pascal. Together we're calling ourselves the NG Duo because we like to do Angular stuff together. And today we're going to talk about AngularJS and Web Components. You can find us by our Twitter handles. Mine is Carmen Popoviciu, and Pascal's is Pascal Precht. Feel free to come after the talk to us, ask us questions. We would really like to meet you all. You're so many, so yeah. Sure, let's get started.
All right, so this talk is not only about web components, but also about superheroes, actually. And so yeah, Mishko actually said that a long time ago that, ever wonder why AngularJS is superheroic? Because Google's interns are superheroes. And he posted that on G+, with this animated GIF. So this is one of their interns. And so our response to that is actually that. Ever wonder why the Angular community is so awesome? Because it has superheroes as well. And so this is NG Duo in action, right? There are going to be more superheroes on this slide deck, so yeah. All right, web components in general. Before we actually start talking about how to integrate web components with AngularJS, we want to first give you a brief introduction to what web components actually are. And of course, there's not enough time to cover everything, but we want to give you kind of idea of what's going on there. So web components is actually a collection of standards that will change the way we will build web applications. So it's not only just the web component standard. There are more standards that actually make the web components. And these standards are these four technologies. We have HTML templates to define templates with HTML. We have Shadow DOM that finally makes it possible to encapsulate DOM and styling. And we have custom elements and HTML imports. And we take a look at these technologies now. So HTML templates. HTML templates are inner chunks of the clonable DOM that can be activated later for use. So what does that mean? Maybe you can, so back in the days, 2008 or something, when Backbone was a thing, and handlebars, we use these tools to actually, define our templates with JavaScript tags and, give them their script tags, sorry. So there were actually script tags with a different type than JavaScript tags, right? And then we use these kind of hacks to define our templates. And we use that because when we define these kind of script tags with this type, the script tags are not rendered because it's not interpreted as JavaScript. And web components comes with this HTML templates standard that actually makes it possible for us to define templates with a real template tag, right? So what we see here is a template tag, and it holds a couple of DOM elements there. And the cool thing is that this template is first clonable DOM. We can just take this template or the contents of this template and put it somewhere in our main document and use it, right? It's parsed but not rendered. That means even if we define this template inside our main document, you won't see it on the page. And things like images and styles and scripts are not loaded or run, right? If you have media there, like audio or video or audio elements, then these aren't played anyway, also not played. So activate them later means that you have to clone the contents of this template and put it into your actual document body. And this is what it looks like. So we query the template, in this case by ID. We set the source of an image tag that we saw here, right? There's an image tag without a source. So we set the source, and then we actually append this DOM element to our actual document body. And this will activate the template, right? These are HTML templates. The next thing we want to take a look at is Shadow DOM. And Shadow DOM is actually super complex, and it's a beast, but it's super useful and super powerful. So Shadow DOM gives us DOM tree encapsulation and style boundaries. So what does that mean? We're actually finally able to define, or actually to hide DOM logic behind single elements, right? So when we take a look at the input type time element, we see that there's actually already Shadow DOM in the browsers today. So we can see this is this element right here, and I can click here, and the time changes as we see. And all we use is, all we do is we just define this single element, right? But if we enable the Shadow DOM inspection in our DevTools, and we inspect the source, then we can see that there's a so-called shadow root. And there's a couple of other stuff going on behind that element. There are a lot of div tags and spans and even accessibility attributes. So it's not only just this single tag. There's a real life behind it, right? So this is a shadow root. And to understand what that actually means is, so we take a look at this graphic here. On the left side, we see a document tree, and this is what we are usually dealing with when we do something with JavaScript and HTML. And this document tree can have child nodes, so DOM nodes, and each of these childs can have their own childs. And in fact, each of these DOM nodes can be a so-called shadow host, right? And a shadow host holds a so-called shadow tree. We can create a shadow tree for a shadow host, and this shadow tree is also just DOM, which we just saw for the input element, and which has its own childs and stuff. All right, but the funny thing is that when we create a shadow root for a shadow host, what's actually rendered is the shadow tree, right? So what we see in the browser in the end is the stuff that is in the shadow DOM, not the stuff that is in the light DOM. So that means we can define DOM logic and hide it behind one single element. Just to get an idea of how that works, we have this div element right here. It says hello world, and we query selector it, and then we create a shadow root, and we in a HTML another string. So in the end what gets rendered is the string hello NG Europe instead of hello world, right? And of course, because it's just DOM and just HTML, we can even just take HTML template contents and clone these contents into the shadow root, right? So what we see here is, we create a shadow root, and we query the template, and we append that contents into our shadow root, right? So here you see the first combination of two technologies. Okay. So there's so much more, actually, about Shadow DOM. We have insertion points, which is sort of like what you know as transclusion, but it's a bit more powerful. We have encapsulated styling, so there we have new CSS styling selectors. And we can even create multiple shadow roots for a single element if we want to. But we move on to the next one.
Right, which is custom elements. So custom elements are really cool because they allow developers to create new HTML tags, basically. So they're extending the HTML vocabulary, which I think is really awesome. If you want to create a custom element, you first have to register it. And you do that by invoking document.registerElement. The first argument that you see, custom element, is basically the name of your custom element. It needs to have the dash in there, because that tells the parser that it's a custom element, and then it helps the parser differentiate between custom elements and just regular components. You also see the prototype there, and I want to look a bit further into that. So the prototype, by default, a custom element inherits from HTML elements, but you can inherit from whatever you want. The prototype is also the place where you actually want to add properties and methods on your element, which then are basically available to the outside world through the element API. There are also a few lifecycle callbacks. You see here create callback. This is one of the most important ones. Yeah, you can create the shadow root here, but you can also register event listeners, which are very important. Then you have the attribute change callback. So this basically means that whenever your the attributes that you've defined on your custom elements change, this thing gets triggered, and then all the logic that you have in there gets executed. How do you instantiate it? Well, you basically just use custom element tag if you want to declare it in your HTML, or you can do it with JavaScript with document create element, and then you just append into the document. And last but not least, the HTML imports, which is basically an include for the web. So if you think about, like if you want to include JavaScript in your document, then you have the script tag. If you want to include images, you have the img tag. So basically what this means is this is a way to tell, OK, I have this external HTML. I want to include it in my document. And you do this by using the link tag and setting the rel attribute to import. You do have to keep in mind that this does not tell the parser to, OK, I have this import.html document, so bring me the content of it. It tells the parser to, OK, I have this file, bring the file to me so that I can use it later on. So you will not have access to the content of import.html by just invoking this. So if you want to get access of that, you need to use a document query selector. And then that returns the document which has this import property on it, and that's where actually your content is. And then you can query whatever you want in there, and you can do basically whatever you need to do there. So how do we put this all together?
OK, so we saw that we now have 4 different technologies, and these technologies are decoupled, right? So you can use just one or the other, or you can use all of them in combination. And yeah, so the cool thing is that when we really put these things together, we can build these web components. And what we see here is a new tag, ngDuo, and we created that one with web components technologies, and we just we show you what it does. So this is the ngDuo tag, and the funny thing is when you actually click on that image, it's broken.
It's broken. That's what it does.
Okay,
no.
maybe we can fix that real quick. All right, let's see what's going on here. Oh wait. Okay, so the server wasn't running. All right. All right. Sorry for that. Let's refresh real quick.
Yeah, and then internet.
Hopefully the Wi-Fi gods are with us. Yes, they are. All right, so yeah.
Let's see, try again.
All right, so we click on that image, and
Yay!
we see
Woo!
we have a couple of other ngDuos there.
Woohoo!
And yeah, so yeah, we took a couple of pictures during the conference.
Yeah, and we really want to thank the people who post for us.
Okay, so now we have this beautiful and great new element, ngDuo. And now it's the question, how can we actually use that one in our AngularJS application? Is that possible or not? So
what we could do is, we could just use it like this separately. So you have the xngDuo element, and then you have this to the rescue attribute, which basically gets the image URL. As you can see, this is totally independent of the Angular world. So this is just DOM, right? So there's no binding in there. There's nothing. So it doesn't for this element. It doesn't matter in which world you put it. It's just It can exist by itself, so it's just DOM, and you can just put it wherever you want. There's no interaction between this component and the Angular world, so this will cause no problems whatsoever. However, the most interesting things start to happen when you actually do want to have the component and Angular interact with each other. So for instance, in this example, you see that we have this string interpolation there for the to the rescue attribute. So then it's very interesting to see like what's going to happen then. Will that really resolve to what we want, to the real path to the image that we can use? So how do we integrate web components with Angular? Well, with today's Angular, the thing is that, well, Angular just doesn't know about web components. And you have to keep in mind that at the point that Angular was starting to be developed, web components were just still, out there. So basically, Angular doesn't know. And also in the future, it should not know, because it's just another element like any other element on your page. But yeah, Pascal and I, we're a bit more stubborn, so we actually did want to build something to make it work. So the first thing that we actually ran into was how do we deal with data binding? And then we should go back to the example that I showed with the string interpolation. And when we talk about data binding, there are actually two highways that we need to look at. First is the writing of data. So how does the data from Angular bind to the custom element? And then there's the reading data, which basically means if there's a change happening in the state of the custom element, how is that transmitted to the Angular world? For the first one, that's actually pretty straightforward. So what happens there is that we have this change which is detected inside the Angular world, and Angular does that using its own internal mechanism. And then what Angular needs to do is just reflect that change into the element's attribute or property. When the custom element gets that change, it actually, the element doesn't care how that change happened. So it's completely unaware of all that, of Angular's internal mechanism of change detection. So from that point of view, they're separate. They're in different worlds. So all it needs to do is it just needs to process that change. But that basically becomes part of its own internal logic. So it has nothing to do with Angular. Then with reading data, that gets a bit more complicated, because when the element changes its internal state, it needs to communicate that somehow to the outside world. And then Angular needs to come in the picture, and then it needs to process that change. But it turns out that it's, well, how does Angular know that this custom element, that it's somewhere out there, it changed, especially under the circumstances that it has no recognition of custom elements whatsoever. So how do we deal with that?
Yeah, so how do custom elements actually notify the outside world that changes happen? So first, the fact is that a custom element can change its DOM attributes or its DOM properties, right? And these are two different things, actually. We can change attributes of our custom element. And these changes can actually be detected with DOM mutation observers, right? So you can observe any element and observe their changes on their attributes. So when that happens, then you can trigger something. For example, in your Angular 1.3 world, you would need to call something like scope.apply. That also means that this element has to reflect the value of any property back to the attribute. Otherwise, this change won't happen, right? So the second way to actually tell the outside world that something happened is by using events, right? Simple events that we all know by elements. So we have four APIs that elements provide. Attributes.
It's actually one API, and then it has 4 components.
Yeah. Okay, so we have 4 ways to actually get something out of an element, and this is attributes, properties, events, and what was the fourth one? Methods, of course. Yeah. Okay, so to show how it actually what it looks like when we use a web component inside the Angular world. So what we see here is our ngDuo web component on the right side. And on the left side, it's the same component implemented as directive, right?
Yeah.
So when we click on the directive, it changes the image. And we can see that the change also happens in the web component, right? Because Angular tells the web component from the outside world that there's a change.
We'll show some code, and then it will get clear to you.
Yeah. Also, when we click on the web component, the change is also happening in the Angular world. And yeah, now the question, how does that work?
Yeah. So let's show like really quickly some code. We have 2 minutes left.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Where do you want to go?
I want to see, let's start by looking at the custom element.
All right. Okay. So, can everybody see this? Do we need a different color scheme? Larger? Is that big enough? All right. All right.
Is this good? Cool.
All right.
No.
No? All right, okay.
No, this is better. Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, sure, let's have a look. So I can see here our, where we create our prototype. We inherit from HTML elements. And then remember the create callback that I told you. This is basically where we get the source, we create the shadow root, we get its content, the template, we query the image, we set the source, we append the clone, and then, can you take me to a bit lower? To the attribute changed. And this is, remember what I told you, the callback of attribute change callback. So this basically means that whenever the to the rescue attribute changes, what we're doing is we're just, we're resetting the source of our image to whatever comes from there. And then, yeah, at the bottom we register. And then, what you also notice there is that we add an event listener on the image tag itself. So whenever we're clicking, what we're doing is we're setting the attribute to, we're randomly generating this. So we're just setting the attribute to this, to what the random generator returns, which in turn, then it will trigger the attribute change callback, which will make sure that the source of our image is contains the thing that we want it to contain.
So the outside world now is interesting that we can actually see the change in the attribute is happening there, right? And we can observe these change with mutation observers. And it turns out that there's actually already a project out there who that actually handles that stuff. And it's called Angular Bind Polymer, because the idea behind it was to integrate the worlds of Polymer and AngularJS together. But it turns out that it doesn't need to be Polymer. All you need to make sure is that your custom element reflects the value from the property back to the attribute, right? So if we take a look at the controller that actually passes in the data, I don't know, we take a look at the...
You should look at the partial.
Yeah, sure. I think it was views, right? Yeah, there we go. So this is the markup, and here we see
so the first one is the directive, and then the second one is the custom element, and then you see on the custom element that we have that bind polymer, which actually helps us to deal with some data binding
this
issues.
directive does exactly that. It sets up a mutation observer for the to the rescue property, and triggers a scope.apply once there's a change happening. Okay.
Yeah, I think we can move forward.
So, AngularJS and Web Components tomorrow. So how does Angular actually integrate that stuff in version 2.0? So the stuff we show now is based on work in progress documents, so things might change in the future. And we say that because when we say things that we cannot promise, bad things can happen. For example, Brian, he said on Twitter that because people keep asking him, yes, he's working on a new AngularJS batarang, and yes, he will fix it'll fix that issue that they have. And Igor said, okay, so that sounds like a promise he can't keep, right? And this is what happens then. So this is Igor and Brian. So we don't want that to happen. So how does Angular 2.0 actually tackle that stuff in the future?
Okay, so we read a lot the design documents. There are a lot of things to consider, but we're also running out of time, so I'll very quickly run through them. I think that one of the most important things that was an eye-opener for us was this difference between binding to properties and binding to attributes. So you have to keep in mind that binding to attributes will only allow you to pass in strings. So for instance, if I have a property on my custom element in which I need to bind an object, that will just not fly. So then you need to bind to properties. There are also some other issues. Please refer to the documents, read them 2, 3, 4 times, as many times as you want. It will become clear, trust us. If you want to deal with that, then the way to go is, if you see at the bottom there, we have the sources property and the binding to it. And then the same goes for event binding, where the syntax proposal is just the round braces. I think we don't have time for more.
Yeah. So, but we have time for 2 more questions, right?
Yeah.
Because there are some prizes here. So.
Yeah.
We have a Chromecast and a external battery thingy. So, okay.
Okay, so we have a question over there.
I have a question. If you add your web components on the HTML, you have this include, but do you need still to unpack your components in JavaScript? Because when you create, there was an example, if you create them in JavaScript, you need to unpack them, yes?
You import them.
Import them.
Well, actually, it depends. When your web component is defined in your importee, the document that gets imported, you have access to the main document that imports the important document, and from there, actually, you can register your custom element. So you don't have to care about that when it's done in this way.
Sorry, can you repeat that about registering your custom element?
Sorry.
You mentioned register custom element.
Yeah. Yeah, you register your custom element with document.register. You can do that in your importee document. Yeah. Yeah, because you have access to the document object from the main document that actually imports the importee. You want to choose the second one?
Yeah. Over there? Yes, you. Sorry, can you repeat?
If we can use, so the question was if we can use two-way data binding between. Could you please be quiet? We don't understand the question.
Big car.
Can you use two-way data binding?
So do you want to answer the question or?
Yeah, because in the example that you had,
Yeah. So there's no real two-way data binding going on there because there's no way to really observe the changes on the property from the custom element or the web component. You have to rely on events and then, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
So we have to actually give this to somebody, right?
Yeah, I think the Chromecast goes to the first person and then the battery to the second one.
All right. Chromecast winner and the second one.
Thank
From
you.
the stage.